Well, welcome. The League of Women Voters is pleased to present this General Issues Pre-Primary Forum for the Duluth City Council Districts number 2 and number 4 seats. And thank you, candidates, for your willingness to participate in city government and in this forum. My name is Pat Castellano. I am a member of the League of Women Voters of Duluth and a trained and certified League of Women Voters moderator. On behalf of the League, I would like to welcome everyone. And thanks to PACT for doing this for us. The League of Women Voters believes that an informed citizenry is the foundation of effective democracy. The League is open to membership for men and women who are interested in nonpartisan civic participation. The League of Women Voters of Duluth realizes that creative and innovative policies and practices are forged out of diverse points of view. We believe diverse perspectives are necessary for responsible and representative decision making. It's our commitment to welcome and facilitate diversity, equity, and inclusion in all aspects of our work. We strive to include people from a mix of abilities and backgrounds in all of our activities. And you're invited to join us. For more information, check out our website at www.lwvduluth.org. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan volunteer organization that works at the local, state, and national level to encourage citizens to participate in government. While we as a league do study and take stands on issues, we do not endorse or support political parties or candidates. The views expressed at this forum are those of the participating candidates and not those of the League of Women Voters of Duluth. Additionally, LWV sponsorship of this forum is not a league endorsement of any of the individual candidates participating. And please remember, viewers, to exercise your right to vote on Tuesday, August 10th. At this time, I'd like to introduce the candidates. The candidates for District Number 2 City Council are Andrew Jiraki and Mike Mayo and Dave Zabracki.
Good job.
Thank you. And representing District 4 is Nathaniel Rankin.
Thank you.
Candidate for District 2, Andrew Hilfers, was not able to attend. And District 4 candidates Howie Hansen and Renee Van Nett were not able to attend. Candidates not in attendance were offered the opportunity to submit an opening statement for this forum in accordance with the League of Women Voters Minnesota Empty Chair Policy. We'll begin the forum with the candidates giving a 2-minute opening statement followed by the questioning round. The questions have been vetted by the organizing committee. Candidates were not given the questions in advance. Each candidate will be given up to 1.5 minutes in which to provide their response. And each candidate will be asking questions in a rotating order. The order in which candidates respond was determined at random. We'll rotate the responses throughout this forum. And after the questioning round is completed, each candidate will be allowed a 2-minute closing statement prior to the end of the forum. We're going to begin with District 2 candidate Andrew Hilfer's prepared statement per the League of Women Voters Minnesota Empty Chair Policy. District 4 candidates Hansen and Van Nett did not submit a prepared statement, so I'll read candidate Hilfer's now. Andy Hilfers. Hello there. Thank you to the League of Women Voters of Duluth for contacting me and giving me the opportunity to talk to the community. I'm very sorry I was not able to be present in person today. I'm finishing up the last week of Session 2 summer school at Denfeld with my students. About me, I decided to run for City Council not for any reason more than I like living here and I want to do what I can to make it better for everyone else who lives here too. I'm not wanting to be a career politician and I'm not a business owner with something to gain. I've always been the person who, if there's a job that needs to be done, I'll volunteer and try my best. I'm currently a high school teacher working in the Duluth School District. I work part-time at a locally owned liquor store. I'm a commuter who drives all over our roads. I frequent the local scene as well as touristy areas. I love to walk trails and visit our parks and lakes. I've been a student and a citizen. I think we have a wonderful place here in Duluth and we are doing well, but we can be so much better. We should be supporting local businesses over national chains. We need to be supporting affordable housing projects for the people who live here and those who want to move here. We need to treat our essential workers as such and support giving them a livable wage and the benefits they deserve. We need to be supporting and raising up the jobless and homeless population in Duluth, treating them with the dignity of the people they are, and making much more available the resources they need to get back to where they need to be in life, instead of trying not to meet their gaze at the street corners. We should do the utmost to protect and conserve our natural resources for us to enjoy now and for all the generations to come. We need to protect Second Amendment rights for all citizens and avoid word game laws like assault weapon bans. We should be looking into making broadband internet a public utility and ensuring access for everyone. We need to address the growing equity issues in our school districts between East and West and ensure all students get the resources and support they need to succeed in life. We should be doing what we can to make Duluth an inviting place for industry and make more jobs available for local professionals and maintain the graduates of our universities. We also need to do much more in maintaining and replacing the infrastructure our city is built on. As your counselor, I'm not sure how much sway I'll have in making any of these things happen, but if these ideals fit the bill for someone you would like to see help make decisions on how we run our community, then I would greatly appreciate your vote this August and November. If not, thank you for being interested in local politics, and I encourage you to vote regardless. All right, and opening statement, we'll start with Mike Mayo.
All right, so hi everyone, my name is Mike Mayo, and I am a lifelong Duluthian. I grew up out in the Lakeside neighborhood of Duluth and graduated from Duluth East, graduated from UMD after that, and have just always loved living in Duluth my entire life. It's something that, whether it was our connected community or the lake access or our amazing systems of parks and trails, Duluth really has it all, and I think that Duluth really has a bright future where we're going. So I really became passionate about becoming involved in our community at a young age, really realizing through the union values of my parents how strong the values of solidarity are in Duluth, and how we really need to come together as a community to help those of us who just need to thrive. And that's part of why I'm running, is because I believe that Duluth needs to be a place where everyone can thrive. And why I'm really excited about this campaign. And some of the issues I'm running on this year, they include expanding access to affordable housing across Duluth, a dire need that we'll probably all talk about today, protecting our environment for generations to come. As I talked about, many of us live in Duluth because of our pristine environment and all of the parks and trails and everything we have to offer here. And also being a responsive counselor for the 2nd District and continuing the tradition of progressive and responsive counselors for our district, because whether it's that issue on the street in front of your house or a larger city issue, I want to be that person you can go to in City Hall, and we can work through an answer and get your problem solved. So my name is Mike Mayo, and once again, I'm really happy to be here. Thank you for the League of Women Voters and PACT-TV for organizing this today.
Thank you. Andrew Jiraki.
Thanks, Pat. And let me just say, I loved your pitch. I will be joining the League of Women Voters, and I'm also grateful for this forum today. My name is Andrew Jiraki. I'm a lifelong Duluthian, and I'm running for City Council for 3 reasons. I think that as we emerge from the pandemic, Duluth has more potential than any other place in the world. And that's why I want to make sure that Duluth is the best place in the state and country to raise a family, find a home, and open a business. And let me just explain a little bit how the City Council can help each of those ways Duluth flourish. First, raising a family. I think that our local leaders should be champions for local families. And on the council, I will be. For example, working families have expressed to me how the child care crisis was exacerbated by the pandemic, which is why I propose using $12 million of our American Rescue Plan funds to alleviate the child care burden that our working families face. Families have also expressed to me a great desire for public safety, which is why I will work closely with our police department to ensure we have both an effective and accountable law enforcement body that our community can be proud of. I am concerned by the rising thefts on property, as well as threats to safety on our streets. And that's why I believe that Duluth should be a place that no family and no household needs to fear. Next, speaking of places we call home, every Duluthian needs a home. And that's why I'm determined to do more than any other candidate to expand the housing supply in Duluth. Housing affordability is a big part of why families decide to live here. And to ensure that we can continue to attract and retain young families, we need to make sure there are homes that are affordable for them. For example, right now in Duluth, it can cost up to 80% more to build a house compared to similar sized cities in the United States, according to a 2018 study by the Arrowhead Builders Association. This study, as well as the Mayor's Housing Task Force, identified the permitting and fee process of the city as a #1 obstacle to building houses in a timely and affordable manner to meet our population growth. And on the council, I will streamline that process. And most importantly of all, I believe Duluth needs to be a place where we can open a business. We need good paying jobs to support our community. The website Wallet Hub recently ranked Duluth as the 1,082nd best small city in America to open a business. We can do much better, and we will. That's why I'll be a voice for fiscal prudence and low taxes. My name is Andrew Jiraki, and I hope you'll vote for me.
Thank you. Dave Zabraki?
Thank you so much to the League of Women Voters for holding this forum and for inviting us. My name is Dave Zabraki. I'm a fifth-generation Duluthian. My wife and I live in the Congdon neighborhood where we settled about 5 years ago. I'm also an East and UMD grad. I'm a full-time dad to my kids, Catherine and Adam. They keep me very busy. Prior to getting married, I worked full-time in the ski industry as an instructor and a coach. My wife is a physician with Essentia Health, and then she's also a 25-year member of the 148th Fire Wing and an Iraq War veteran. The motto for my campaign is "Let's build a better Duluth," and "Let's build a better Duluth" kind of starts with three things. One is better neighborhoods. We want cohesive, walkable neighborhoods with accessible streets for all users. A better economy. We want to help bring family-sustaining jobs to our area and retain more of our college graduates. We need an economy that works, for everyone, not just a tourist-based economy, which tourism is fine, but I think we can do better as far as our economy goes. And then finally, it's a better government. We need to make sure that we fully fund public safety and street and sidewalk repair. Currently, 40% of our revenue approximately comes from local government aid. And we really need to think about how we can broaden our tax base. If that LGA is ever changed, that formula is changed, or it goes away, then we're in trouble. So I'm proud to be endorsed by the Duluth Central Labor Body, the Duluth Building Trades, the Duluth Police Union, Local 807, a few other unions, and just recently the Duluth News Tribune. So very proud of those endorsements and the support that I've had so far, and humbly ask for your vote on August 10th.
Thank you. And Nathaniel Rankin?
Good morning, everybody. I'm Nathan Rankin. I'm running for District 4. I'm born and raised in the West End, also known as Lincoln Park District. It could be my surprise if somebody didn't know where West End was. I actually still live in the same house that I grew up in, that my parents bought the day I was born. So, I've been in the house for 47 years. I'm proud of my neighborhood. I know a lot of people call the Lincoln Park District kind of like the low-income housing area. That's what people like to call it. I don't see it that way. As everybody else has expressed, affordable housing is like one of the biggest things people look at, but what is the definition of affordable housing? Everybody has a different view on it. Livable wages. Everybody has this idea of livable wages. What's the definition of a livable wage? Everybody has a different definition of it. I'm running mostly on basically, let's get jobs here. He had mentioned we have colleges here. Our college kids don't stick around because there is no jobs here for them. Manufacturing jobs would be great. I remember growing up having a friend that worked at Diamond Tool. I was actually looking forward to it, to work at Diamond Tool. They let it slip out the door. I say bring it back. Let's bring some tool manufacturing jobs back here. Let's bring a steel plant here. We have the Iron Range up above us. They ship a lot of their iron ore here to us. Let's start manufacturing that steel here back in Duluth like we used to have out in the Morgan Park area. We had a steel plant, disappeared. I say let's bring that back. I do agree tourism's a great thing, but I also grew up knowing that you don't put all your cookies in one jar and hope it floats. You got to diversify it out. You got to have a backup plan. to me, tourism's great, but there's no backup. What happens when people stop coming here because there's nothing to do? So I'm more for jobs. Affordable housing would be great, but we got to figure out where is the guidelines for affordable. How do we define it? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now we'll move to the question portion. Questions solicited by the organizing committee. Each candidate will have 1.5 minutes to respond, and we'll begin with candidate Rankin.
Oh, sweet.
Okay. The question is, how do you define leadership?
Leadership is a person that's willing to take responsibility as a leader. If you're going to lead people, you have to take responsibility when it actually fails. If you can't take responsibility, you're not a good leader. I mean, you're just basically passing the buck like it's been done most of the time. So that's how I define leadership. It's a person who's willing to lead, take responsibility when something fails, don't throw it off on second command. You take responsibility for it. It's like the old saying goes, the captain goes down with the ship.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Same question, candidate Zabracki.
You know, I think leadership is, yes, it's about being accountable. It's about having a plan. It's about having a vision. And then also, something that I've learned in my life is it's about being humble. It's about listening. And it's about learning to know when you're wrong and admit it. And frankly, I think, you know, that's one of those things that I'm very much willing to admit when I'm wrong. And that's my one way of standing out as a leader. So learning from experience and moving forward.
Thank you. Candidate Mayo.
Yeah, so I would define leadership as really standing up for the community. And something that I've learned through the hundreds of doors that I've been knocking so far is that we have a lot of community members with a lot of great ideas and a lot of things that are going on in our neighborhoods across the 2nd District. So it's standing with those community members, especially when we know that the community is in the right. And sometimes it's making those hard decisions or voicing your concern and saying, these are my values. This is what the community values as well. And this is what we need to do moving forward. And I also think what was brought up before of really being humble and listening is really important as well. So something I'm definitely committed to doing as a candidate and as a potential counselor, and yet continuing to stand for your values and not compromising on that, while at the same time really standing up for the community when they're right.
Thank you. And same question, candidate Jiraki.
Leadership really comes down to one word, Pat. And this is the word that I'll strive to emulate every single day of my term: listening. It's all about listening. It's listening to business owners when they complain that our taxes are hurting their ability to provide good paying jobs and driving restaurant customers up over the hill to Hermantown or across the bridge to Superior. It's listening to our population that visits downtown and Canal Park businesses and feels unsafe because of the unhoused population there. And it's listening to our folks that enjoy our great trails and park systems, that want them to be protected and expanded. So I'll keep it simple, Pat. It's about listening, which is why if I want you to remember one thing about me as your counselor, it's that I will listen to you.
Thank you. Next question, and we'll begin with candidate Jiraki. Identify one of the most important challenges facing our city and how you propose to address it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Pat. Well, I've talked about a few issues today that are on the minds of our community, and that's housing, that's homelessness, but really it all comes back to jobs. It comes back to good family supporting jobs. Duluth needs to be a place that can attract and retain job creators. As one local business owner put it well to me, business is the engine of growth in our community. We cannot have a tax base. We cannot have the resources we need to address any other problem. And we cannot help the most vulnerable find long-term solutions without employers in our city. Which is why my top issue is to listen closely to the job creators in our business community, to our private sector, and to meet and consult often with the Chamber of Commerce, the Downtown Business Council, and the Greater Duluth Business Association to ensure that I am listening to the needs of our job creators. And that's why I'll make sure to be a voice of fiscal prudence and restraint on our council, to use our tax resources wisely and ensure that we right-size our regulations and make it as easy as possible to move your business to Duluth.
Thank you. Candidate Mayo.
Yeah, so I believe it's really a combination of two things. The largest issue we're really facing is the cost of housing as it relates to our living wage jobs and our economy here in Duluth. Whether it's a college student just graduating or it's a person who lives in the 2nd District and they are aging gracefully in their home, there's a lot of people that are struggling to remain in housing and afford the cost of living in our city. And as a counselor in the 2nd District, that's something that I'm really looking forward to address. Between those two, there's a lot of folks who graduate college, they say, I can't afford to live in Duluth because I either can't find a house or I can't find a job that's going to pay me enough to afford to live here. We have lots of jobs in our service industry, but we need to continue to grow and expand some of our other industries in town. So the combination of those two, I think, is really critical, and I'm looking forward to using my experience from being a member of the Community Development Committee and allocating CDBG and home funds to affordable housing projects across Duluth, and using that experience to kind of help best use and best get the best bang for our buck on City Council when we're allocating funds to projects. So really looking forward to addressing those.
Great, thank you. Candidate Rankin.
Well, the main priority problem in Duluth is there's, as everybody said, jobs. There isn't really any jobs. All the jobs are geared towards tourism. They're not geared towards sticking around working one job to make a living. It's basically work 2-3 jobs to make a living. So, as Mike had mentioned, jobs and affordable housing go together as one. They're a mate. Without good jobs, you can't get affordable housing. So to me, basically releasing the red tape on the job industry. Let's bring jobs inside here, release the red tape, allow more jobs to move in. We all love our environment. People that produces jobs love the environment. They don't want to destroy it. I think America's like the #1 cleanest country in the world because we thrive to keep the country clean. So I think letting a couple manufacturing jobs move it in. I know we have the paper mill out there that everybody's trying to save. My idea is scrap the paper mill. Let's put a manufacturing job inside there. Let's make tools. Let's make those tools for the hospitals we have here. I mean, we got 2 major hospitals here. Let's start making tools here. So basically jobs is my #1 priority, is bringing real living wage jobs here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Candidate Zabraki.
I'll just echo that, jobs and housing are very, very important. When it comes to jobs, I've had conversations with folks who are involved in economic development and, finding out really how that process works about, trying to bring those jobs to the area. And then it's a lot more complicated than just saying, well, we need to bring these jobs here. You actually have to do the groundwork to bring those folks in here. But, when it comes to jobs and housing in Duluth, Duluth actually has more jobs in the city itself than there is population. And so there's a lot of people that come from different communities to work here, and then they go and they live somewhere else. And people can make that choice, and that's fine. But when we talk about affordable housing and workforce housing, another thing we have to really look at is zoning. We can talk about those things all we want, but if you look at a zoning map in the city of Duluth, in much of the city, it's actually basically not legal to build more affordable housing. And we need to think about addressing some of those issues. I know Minneapolis has done some pretty radical things, and there's some other states that have moved in that direction. And we need to think about and this goes along with, broadening the tax base, more walkable neighborhoods, things like that, that we need to have more options for folks, the so-called missing middle when it comes to housing. That's not just a single family home or, an apartment building. There's things like townhomes and other things that better options for folks.
Thank you. And Candidate Zabraki, we're going to start with you on the next question.
Sure.
The bag it ordinance, that's a 5-cent fee on single-use plastic bags, was planned to go into effect on January 1, 2021. Due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, the initiation date was delayed and has yet to go into effect. What's your plan to move forward with this ordinance?
Well, first of all, I'm generally for the ordinance. One of the things that I didn't like about it was that it kind of got muddied down, and then we put things in there when it came to like income-based things and like how exactly do we evaluate it, and then I think the ordinance ultimately got watered down. And so I think if you're going to have the ordinance, and then make it a lot easier for folks to get those reusable bags who might have a financial issue doing so. I think we have enough people in the community, volunteer efforts and so on to make that work. Another thing from having a spouse in the healthcare industry that's treated a lot of COVID patients is that we know now that COVID is mostly an airborne illness. It's not really a surface transmitted virus like a lot of other viruses are, by the way, like the flu and colds and things like that. And so we delayed the ordinance implementation, but now that we have the evidence to say that no, you're not getting COVID from a reusable bag, I think we can move forward.
Thank you. Candidate Rankin, same question.
I'm actually against it. Because where do we stop there? I mean, all of a sudden now it's a 5 cents bag plastic usage. What's next? I'm against it. My wife and I, we recycle plastic bags. We use them for our little small garbage cans. We put them instead of small garbage cans, so we're always reusing them. And my bottle here, I can return this and get 10 cents. Can I bring my bag back and get 5 cents if I recycle it? So yeah, I'm actually against the ordinance. I'm not for it. I don't think it makes any sense. I think it's overstepping boundaries to tell the store, we're going to charge you 5 cents per bag. Where does the money go to? How's it going to get spent? Who's going to regulate it? What's going to be done with it? So I'm actually against it. I'm not for it. I do believe in recycling. I recycle every single plastic bag I use. It's either wrapping up the grandchildren's dirty diaper inside it, put inside the garbage can so you don't smell it, or using it as a garbage bag. I mean, I don't see much plastic bags floating around in the environment, as everybody claims. I drive around a lot with my job. I don't see them. So I'm against it, just because it's overstepping the boundaries in my eyes. And thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Jiraki?
Well, I think, Pat, that we can all agree that we need to reduce our use of plastic, both locally here in our city and in the world. And I'm all for reducing the use of single-use plastics. However, I think this is a very critical opportunity to practice listening towards our business community. So on the council, I would advocate for a 1-year pause to give us time to speak with every relevant business owner, our grocery chains, our local convenience stores, and other manufacturers, to understand how this cost affects them, and most importantly, how it affects their consumers. Because, Pat, beyond the costs to business, I'm incredibly worried that this tax could prove to be regressive on some of our lowest income Duluthians, which is why I'm all for finding ways to reduce our use of single-use plastics, but only after we are sure that it will not harm our most vulnerable community members and our job creators, which is why I'll advocate for a 1-year pause.
Thank you. And Candidate Mayo.
So I'll start off by saying I'm a supporter of the Baggett ordinance, and I've talked many times and worked closely with Jamie Harvey, who's kind of been at the lead of this push to enact the Baggett ordinance in Duluth. And it was unfortunate to hear that we put a pause on the Baggett ordinance, but I would say, in my opinion, I think we should enact it as soon as feasibly possible, whether that's after we reach a certain threshold in vaccination rates and we're kind of emerging out of the pandemic, or at the start of the next year, as soon as possible. I also just want to mention too that the Baggett ordinance had a long list of supporters, which did include many of the folks in our business community, and there were many conversations that were had, and so it didn't move forward without a lot of input and kind of back and forth figuring out the details of the Baggett ordinance, and so I think that's something that has been worked through very thoroughly, and that's why I'm a large supporter of it. I think we need to reduce our use of single-use plastics, and if we're moving towards a green energy economy, when we're supporting our kind of oil and petroleum industry who's making these bags, it does kind of push us in the wrong direction. So I'm a supporter, and I believe we should enact it as soon as feasibly possible.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And we're going to start with you on the next question.
Perfect.
What measures or initiatives would you support to address the needs of individuals experiencing homelessness?
Yeah, so I'll start by saying that the need for housing and for support for our folks experiencing homelessness in our community is great, and it's probably way greater than many of us anticipated. I just talked with some folks from Loaves and Fishes, and in this last estimate of the number of people living on the streets, it was several times, I think about 5 times what they had originally anticipated the number of people living on the streets was. And whether that was due to the pandemic or whether it was due to just a number of crises going on in our world right now, there are a lot of people in need in our community, and I think it's important that we take steps to address that. As someone who's worked on the Homeless Persons Bill of Rights, I understand kind of what it means to advocate for our homeless community, and also to work and kind of learn about people's experiences and why they can't find the job to sustain them, or they can't get into the housing that they need because there's such a long wait list, or a variety of different things. I'm very encouraged to see that there's $19 million being allocated from the American Rescue Plan funds for kind of helping after the pandemic here find long-term shelter solutions in our city. And I think that's really important for a lot of folks that either can't go to certain places or they can't find the housing that they deserve. So I think there are a lot of steps that we need to take moving forward, but I'm really encouraged by what's happening in our city right now, and working on affordable housing development, as I said in my introduction, is really, really key to this as well. Programs like Rebuild Duluth and the Affordable Housing Trust Fund that are coming forward are a really great start.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And candidate Jiraki?
Sure. Well, Pat, homelessness is one of the top issues I hear about from my friends and neighbors in Duluth. And I think the solution has 3 parts. First, we need to treat the issue with the urgency that it demands. It's a growing problem in our city that hurts our tourism, hurts our ability of local businesses to operate, and it threatens the safety and wellness of all community members, most particularly those who have to experience homelessness. Which is why, on the council, I would form an emergency task force to collaborate closely with local service providers like CHUM and the Duluth HRA, as well as downtown businesses and Canal Park business owners, to create a sustainable, lasting solution. Second, I think it's to realize that the solution is both a mix of housing and services, which is why in the council, like I said, I will be a champion for making it as easy as possible to increase our housing stock. I think Mike is correct to point out the housing fund as well as Rebuild Duluth efforts. But I also think it's important to realize that the public sector alone cannot meet our housing needs. We must make it easier to build, and that starts with the permitting process. And then lastly, I think it's important to stem the tide. We need to take care of our vulnerable Duluthians who are at risk of becoming homeless. I've helped our friends and neighbors apply for tens of thousands of dollars in rental relief from Rent Help Minnesota. On the council, I will do everything I can to push to make sure Duluth families receive all the assistance that they're entitled to make sure no family needs to fear losing their home because of the pandemic.
Thank you. Candidate Rankin?
Homelessness is a problem. I understand it. Some people choose not to live in a house because they like living off the grid. The ones that don't choose it do need a helping hand. We do have a lot of great places. We've got Chum, Damiano Center, and a few other places, HRA and that stuff. Housing is hard for them to find. I get it. But, like I said, some people choose to live out on the streets. They just don't want to be part of the community. It's what they choose. Getting them back into homes, yeah, it's going to be hard because, like I said, what is affordable housing? Are we going to build another big apartment complex? Some people don't like apartment complexes. Some people don't like living in them. They'd rather have a home. Townhomes. For the job I do, I've seen some of the townhomes I've gone into. It's like, I'm afraid to go there. To be honest with you. So, basically working with the homeless is you're going to have to work with the places that actually do work with the homeless. You're going to have to get to know them, see what they're doing, help them out as much as you can, get them funding to do what they need to do. Is how I look at it, and it's kind of where I stand on it. Thank you.
Thank you. And candidate Zabraki?
Yeah, well, homelessness, it's a multifactorial thing, obviously, and I think, you know, a lot of the other candidates have touched on those things. One of the reasons why, when it came down to presidential primaries, I supported Elizabeth Warren was that, you know, she's talked about a lot of, you know, things that happen with family economics and stuff, and one of the major points that she always brought up was that, you know, we don't understand like how so many folks that live in this country, not just in Duluth, but are one catastrophic event in their life from being homeless, from being put in that situation. So I think we need to recognize that first, that you know, there but for the grace of God go I. And another thing we really need to think about is mental health. You know, a lot of folks, you know, a barrier to getting a job is you know, they have some sort of condition that they need treatment for that can make it easier for them to hold and sustain a job and things like that. So you know, mental health is obviously a super important thing when addressing the homeless aspect in Duluth. And then another thing is you're going to see a lot of folks that are homeless that have like certain, you know, chemical dependency issues and stuff. One of the number one things that when it comes to treating homelessness in this country is you always have to have a policy that's housing first. That says, you know, you're going to be a lot more apt to dealing with, you know, the issues that you need to do in your life when it comes to mental health or chemical dependency if you have a roof over your head. And so we need to make sure that our local partners take that into account as well.
Thank you. And we'll, next question, we'll start with you again. Again, candidate Zabraki. The question is, the Duluth City Council recently voted to acknowledge that there's a climate emergency. What concrete actions do you see the city initiating to mitigate the climate emergency?
Well, I remember I saw an article that said that Duluth could be a refugee city or a climate refugee city, and I thought that was a little wishful thinking. You know, the reality is we've had several 100-year storms within the span of you know, about 10 years or so. So we're obviously, you know, you can look at the damage that's happened to the lake walk in several of these large storms and know that we're not immune to the challenges of climate change. We need to work with our local partners to figure out better ways to get to more, you know, renewable energy, whether that's with Minnesota Power, with you know, other city services, and also one of the things is, like, when I talk about more cohesive walkable neighborhoods with accessible streets, is that you need to build a city where it's a lot easier for people to get around without a car, and that's, you know, that's an income thing, but it's also you know, a carbon impact thing. So I think, you know, we need to think of this, you know, picture in total. And I know that, you know, the other candidates out there have, you know, some really good ideas on it too. So, yeah.
Thank you. Candidate Mayo?
Yeah, so I'll start by saying that I'm really excited that the council moved forward with this climate emergency declaration, and now we're working on this climate action work plan, which should be completed by the end of the year. There are some things that, having talked with Mindy Granley, who is our sustainability officer for the city, that I know we're working on that are really innovative and really thinking about the ways that we can move towards a green energy future. Some of them being just looking at our total city emission output from our city buildings and our city fleets and other services that we provide. One of the easiest ideas that Mindy actually mentioned in her presentation was talking about our park system and actually becoming net zero energy emissions, because we use so little energy for our parks and our community centers and our parks that it is very probable that we could move towards that at a very fast pace. That would be a great first step. I also think that when we're talking about our carbon emissions as a city, most of it actually comes from the municipal level. not from the larger buildings that the city owns. So it's working with our provider comfort systems, which we manage as a city, and incentivizing customers to move away from gas as the primary source of heat in their homes. And that would have a large impact on our overall Duluth's carbon emission output. But really, when we're addressing this climate crisis, we need to take bold steps towards the future. These wildfires we're experiencing right now, these storms that have been happening once every 10 years now, it's very difficult for some of us, including myself. I have asthma, to go outside and breathe the air and experience Duluth. And that's something that we really, really need to be focusing on nationwide. But each city can take their own steps, and I think Duluth can be a very large part of that.
Thank you. Candidate Rankin?
As for climate change, how do we really judge it? I wasn't around for 500 years. I've been around for 400 years. We weren't around when the earth was built, manufactured, popped into the air. So how do we really actually know if it's actually changing because of what we're using? I mean, nobody knows what happens to the dinosaurs. They just all of a sudden disappeared. So really, actually, in Duluth, yes, we are doing a good job to me for climate. I mean, I do agree with him. It's you kind of do need a vehicle to get around. We have all these hills we got to drive up and down. I can't imagine pedaling a bike up and down these hills all day. And granted, Cass would probably be bigger finally, but otherwise, yes, climate is kind of changing. I remember growing up here, there being snow in September, snow in August. Now we don't have it anymore. It's a little warmer. It's nice. But as for, dealing with climate change, it's just one of those things that everybody has different views on. I don't really believe it's much of a problem. I think Mother Nature's doing what she does best. She's changing. She's constantly changing. Is it humans affecting it? Or is it just what the earth does? I mean, some people say the earth gets closer to the sun certain times of the year. Some people say it gets farther away from the sun certain times of the year. Where do we judge it? Where do we stop? Getting rid of natural gas to heat homes? Yeah, we kind of need that up here. It's cold up here. I don't think solar panels will do it. I don't think a windmill will do it to heat homes, especially when we go from 40 down to negative 40. We need something that's going to work. Solar panels are great. I'm actually thinking about it, putting them on my house, but I don't think I'm going to rely on that to heat my house. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next question, and we'll begin with candidate Jiraki.
Pat, do you mind if I answer the environmental question?
Sorry, thank you. I've done that many times before. Enter your turn.
No worries.
Yes, thank you.
Well, Pat, I'll just say really quick, I think there's a trio of ways, tangible ways, that Duluth can be a national leader in environmental stewardship. And that is power, transportation, and industry. First, power. I believe that solar power is a great example way that the city can encourage sustainable growth. And that's why I'm all for studying tax credits and other ways to incentivize private homeowners like candidate Rankin to pursue solar energy and solar panels. And I was pleased to see our recent installation along the highway. I also want to work closely with our business community to help them access state and national grants to retrofit their businesses to become more energy efficient. Next, transportation. The world of electric vehicles is rapidly accelerating towards us, and that's why we need to be ready for it. I and the City Council will work to expand our charging port infrastructure to make it more possible to transit Duluth in a sustainable, eco-friendly vehicle. And lastly, industry. The Port of Duluth just had a record year in tonnage of wind power energy. We help provide the world with the blades that power our wind energy, which is why we need to continue to invest in our world-class port to ensure that those blades providing sustainable, life-giving energy throughout our country and world continue, make it to point A to point B, and pass through Duluth successfully.
Thank you. Next question, and we'll begin with candidate Jiraki. In May, the Duluth City Council voted to rescind its mask mandate. If COVID cases continue to increase significantly, what measures would you support to mitigate the spread of coronavirus?
Well, thank you for that, Pat. I think it's very important to defer to both scientific and communal expertise. In scientific expertise, I think it's important that our city continues to watch closely the guidance of both the national bodies like the CDC as well as our local doctors and healthcare providers who understand best the situation here on the ground, which is why I would make any decision based on close consultation with medical experts here in Duluth on the local facts on the ground. As well as for any future diseases or problems, I think it's important that we keep a close eye on vaccination rates and understand what does the science indicate, because my first priority is the protection of the most vulnerable Duluthians. And if I believe, according to the best expertise available, as Dave pointed out, scientific expertise and consensus can evolve, it seems possible to continue to have a thriving local economy without threatening or risking the lives of the most vulnerable, then I will ensure that we continue to have a common sense, clear-eyed vision between fear-mongering and the protection of the most vulnerable.
Thank you. Candidate Mayo, same question.
Yeah. So I'll start by saying that I'm really proud of the decision that the City Council made, a unanimous decision actually last year, to enact this mask ordinance that was recently rescinded, but to enact that in the first place. And it was during a time that there was a lot of question and a lot of back and forth in the community, but I think, in my opinion, it was an easy decision, and I'm really glad that they made it. Going forward with the spread of the Delta variant and a lot of other concern about just community spread in general, I'm going to follow the science and listen to our leaders in the nation of science. And the CDC recommendation that recently came out that communities with significant or higher spread should ask their residents to wear masks when indoors around other folks, regardless of vaccination status. And working at the University of Minnesota Duluth, just today, enacting tomorrow actually, we will be masking regardless of vaccination status on all of our campuses. So this is something that's happening very fast, and if on council, I think it would be a very easy decision if we're gonna protect our community members, because I wear a mask to protect other members who may not be vaccinated, along with myself and others who are vaccinated in vulnerable populations, so that they don't become sick or worse. And I think it's really important that we care for our fellow community members.
Thank you. Candidate Zabraki.
Just to echo what other folks have said, is that yes, we need to listen to our local leaders in healthcare, and then as well as our national leaders as well. One of the most hopeful things that came about with the vaccine was that if you ended up having a breakthrough infection, you were less likely to spread COVID. Or almost not likely at all to spread it, and that's obviously changed now with what we know about the Delta variant, and that's really unfortunate. But we still need to recognize that the best tool that we have in fighting COVID is vaccinations, and we need to keep reaching out to folks that are hesitant to getting the vaccine, meeting them where they are. As the spouse of someone who works in healthcare. And treats folks that have COVID. It really did peak in December and January, where almost over half of the patients that my wife treated had COVID. Now, fortunately, it's a trickle, but it's also rather predictable who haven't gotten their vaccines, and it's there's a reason why I think. The life expectancy of women outweighs the life expectancy of men, and it's a lot of men who are stubborn and don't want to get their vaccine, and that's unfortunate. So we need to continue to instill best practices and reach out to folks and get them vaccinated.
Thank you. And Candidate Rankin.
As for mask mandates, I think it's just going to hurt our small businesses again. I mean, a lot of them are just crushed. If we do another mask mandate, I think our small businesses are going to be crushed. They're going to be hurting again. These bigger corporations made a killing on this mask mandate when they shut down all these small businesses. They couldn't work. But you could walk into your Target store, you could walk into your Walmart store, you could walk into your Sam's Club store. I mean, if we're going to do a mask mandate, we have to do it right, where these small businesses are not going to be hurt by another mask mandate, by another close down. As for vaccinations, I thought our body heals themselves. If you live a healthy life, you're going to heal yourself. So who says the vaccination actually really works? Because now we got the Delta variant. People that have been vaccinated can get the Delta variant. I thought if you got vaccinated, you wouldn't get COVID. So it's kind of confusing. You know, if you listen to science, you're listening to one side of science, but you're not listening to the other party side of the science. You're just all correlating to one group party that says do this, do that. But I don't think a lot of people listen to both sides anymore. I think everybody picks a side, and that's the side they choose with. Myself, I listen to this side and this side. Then I come up with my own idea, and I look and it's like, oh, okay, well, you know, vaccination, whatever happened to the flu? Flu disappeared because COVID came around. So everybody that walks out the door has a sniffle nose, has a cough, you got COVID. You don't got the flu, you got COVID. It's kind of right saying a mask mandate. If we're going to do a mask mandate, we have to make sure small businesses are not going to be punished again for a mask mandate. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question, and we'll begin with candidate Rankin. In September 2016, the Duluth City Council declined to call for a hearing on regulatory matters pertaining to the proposed Polymet mining project. Please describe your decision-making process for whether or not the City Council should be involved in regional, environmental, and economic concerns.
Well, I think they should be involved because, you know, it is going to affect us here in Duluth as well. I think the mining is actually a great idea. I mean, we have minerals here we can mine. It'll make us less dependent on other countries. It's going to bring jobs, good union jobs. It's not just going to be these low-income tourism jobs that come into Duluth. It's going to actually bring real jobs to Duluth. City Council, yes, I do agree they should be involved in it because we're going to be looking out for our city as well. So whatever affects us up above is going to affect us, you know, down here as well. So we have to be included in on it, and I agree with it. They should be included. That's kind of where I stand. I hope Polymet actually goes through. I hope they do actually start mining it to make us less dependent, and it'll bring good jobs here, which will bring affordable housing, livable wages in our little community here. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Zabraki.
Well, I think there were two parts to that question. One was specifically about Polymet. I think that was outside of the purview of the City Council. If the city actually wanted to do something meaningful about that, they would end up, you know, joining into a lawsuit that would potentially cost the city millions of dollars in order to litigate. And that's not something that I want. I think, you know, right now they're in the middle of a regulatory process that's gone all the way up to the Minnesota Supreme Court, and that's, you know, way above the heads of the Duluth City Council. In a broader sense, you know, should the city be involved in, you know, larger discussions? I guess, you know, I'd have to see specifically what those things are before I said so. But I mean, yeah, broadly speaking, for sure, absolutely.
Thank you. Candidate Jiraki.
Sure. Pat, you asked what would be my approach to any question. Well, in any matter of the regional economy, my guiding question is, how does this affect Duluth families, homes, and jobs? And if it is a matter that is interesting or important but does not affect Duluth families, homes, or jobs, then I think it's outside the purview of the City Council. And I don't think our constituents want us using taxpayer time and money to try to act on things we cannot meaningfully change. That being said, if there is a matter of the regional economy that does pertain and directly affect Duluth jobs, families, and homes, I will do everything I can to understand that issue, understand the desires of Duluthians, and study what ways Duluth can meaningfully make a contribution to that regional economy. And so for this example with mining, I believe it's important for us to ask, how does this affect Duluth jobs? How does this affect the Port of Duluth? And how does mining support a future green economy that is electrified, battery powered, and powered by solar and wind turbines that need some of these crucial minerals? And so that's why I think my question will always be, how does this affect our economy? How does this affect Duluthians themselves and their homes and jobs? And what can the city actually do? And then I'll begin that process, if it is relevant, of completely understanding both my constituents' desires and the issue, and what the city can do to help our constituents on that issue.
Thank you. And Candidate Leo, same question.
So I'd like to kind of challenge the notion that it's outside of the purview of the Duluth City Council, simply because I think that as a downstream community of any project, whether it's PolyMet or any other project proposed in our region, we should be very, very thoroughly involved in the potential impacts of any of these environmental related projects. Whether that's bringing a new industry to Duluth or it's something that's happening that's coming down the St. Louis River and potentially impacting our entire watershed in Lake Superior. I'm very proud to be endorsed by Duluth for Clean Water and the DFL Environmental Caucus. And I really do believe that as a downstream community, we should have a voice in this contested case hearing, and we should kind of ask the DNR to expand the contested case focus as well. Right now it's just focused on one permit and one element of the mine, but there are many other elements that should be focused on, including Glencore, the kind of majority stake company in PolyMet, being on the permits because they have a very bad track record in other countries of having projects that have failed and have gone into the local water resources. So I really do believe that it's important to our economy, it's important to our way of life, it's important to our entire ecosystem because we all share the water and the land and the air that we breathe. It doesn't have boundaries, it doesn't have limits. So we should be concerned about anything that's going on in our region that's going to impact us in that way. And I think that PolyMet is a very clear example of something that we should be focused on.
Thank you. Next question, and we'll begin with candidate Mayo.
Yeah.
Communities across the country began to consider alternatives to traditional models of policing where police officers respond to all 911 calls. Share your thoughts on what sort of policing models and or any reforms that would best serve the Duluth community.
Yeah, so I'll just start by saying that within the past year, obviously we've had a lot of calls for social justice. I'm proud to join those calls, and I'm proud to have been joining those calls for the past years. With the death of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Dante Wright, some of these happened in our state, and they really impacted a great number of our residents, and they will continue to impact a great number of our residents until we fix things. For policing specifically, I think this is a great first step to addressing some of the problems we have in our nation. I'm very, very proud that our city moved forward with plans to create a crisis response team, which is actually a pro-police proposal to get social workers and EMS workers on calls that are related to mental health crises and housing crises, where they can really be the best people to address these situations. And sometimes our police officers, they're tasked with too much. They have to respond to a great number of calls, and they have so many different things they're responsible for. So this is a proposal that's going to help pilot this program through the relief funds, as well as kind of help our police officers focus on those 911 calls more. I'm also a proponent of increasing funding for our police and firefighters, our emergency responders, and crisis response funding. And I believe that I'm really excited to work as a counselor with our police department to find ways that we can transform our way of policing and kind of reinvest our money so that it's used best, and our police department is supported with strong paying jobs, as well as really making sure we're doing a good job with policing in the city.
Thank you. Same question, candidate Jiraki.
Sure. Well, like I said earlier, I believe Duluth can have both an accountable and effective local law enforcement agency. Public safety is one of the top demands of families in our district, and I'm ready to work to provide it. And that means having a police department that has the resources it needs. Before I even address the question, Pat, of what kind of model, we have to acknowledge that almost any kind of model that works needs resources. And that's why, whether it be extra training or different kinds of equipment, we need the resources that the police need. And that's why I'm really, really, really a strong proponent of working closely with our police to make sure they have the gear and the training that they need. And on the council, I will commit to regular ride-alongs to understand the situation on the ground and what our officers experience. As for specific types of models, I believe that it's a good thing to incorporate new types of policing, and the accompaniment of social workers or other kinds of experts to calls are important and could help alleviate the burden on our overworked police officers. That's why I'm heartened to see and will continue to support the use of some of our federal relief money to support new kinds of mental health services and different kinds of experts to accompany our police officers. It's also too important to remember, though, that in some calls, especially like domestic violence situations, that for both the safety of the residents of a home as well as for that expert and for the police officer, it is not possible to entirely eliminate an armed officer. That's why we need to make sure that officer has the team that he needs or she needs, the gear that he or she needs, and the training that he or she needs to be the best possible public servant in that situation, which is why I believe in adequate funding, close citizen oversight, and constant listening to the needs of both our community, both our resource professionals, our law enforcement professionals, and our service providers like mental health professionals to understand what effective and accountable policing looks like in our community.
Thank you. Same question, candidate Rankin.
I'm gonna have to kind of make what Andrew had kind of said. Our police department needs the training, needs the resources, basically needs what they need in order to do the job correctly. I always thought it was kind of weird when I had heard something that City of Duluth didn't want to give the police department riot gear. What is riot gear? To me, that's a protective piece of equipment right there that they actually need in order to protect themselves. Same thing goes, with it, anything they need in order to work with the community. I do see a social worker, yes, going to domestic violence and that stuff, but you are still going to need an armed officer because you never know what's going to end up happening when that social worker's inside there talking to somebody. Because we've watched the shows, we've seen it where you get a family dispute, somebody's not going out of that house easily. They're screaming and hollering, they're doing something. Training is a priority that the police department needs. For the couple times I've ridden with them, I was amazed on what they had to go through. And I was amazed how calm they were going through it, where me being looking and going like, oh wow, that guy's like really off the wall. That officer was so calm talking to that guy, getting to know him, knew their names and that stuff, knew exactly who he was talking to, what he had to deal with. That just amazes me on how they can do that. So, resources, training, funding, I don't think we should look at the police department and say, oh, you guys don't need that. It's just like telling the fire department they don't need a fire truck to put fire out. So, and that's kind of where I stand on. I think it's a great idea, but I think it's got to be worked a little bit better. Give them the training, give them the funding, give them the resources. That's how I look at it. Thank you.
Thank you. And candidate Zabraki.
Well, I'll echo a few of the things that I said both to the Duluth News Tribune and then to the Duluth Police Union Local 807 when I filled out their questionnaire. I was proud to receive their endorsement by the Duluth Police Union Local 807. I said, look, if there are ways that we can do things differently when it comes to policing, that's great. Let's do that. What I told the Duluth News Tribune was that people who put on a bulletproof vest in the morning and go to work deserve our respect unless proven otherwise. And I am not for defunding the police. I think it ultimately, we want police officers to be able to do their job effectively and to not be burdened with, broad, with problems that they aren't necessarily the best trained to handle. So I agree, if we can do things differently, that's great. But when we say things like defund the police, it just sounds like we don't have their backs, and that's a really big problem. One of the stats came out in the state of Minnesota that violent crime is on the rise. We've been on a 40-year decline in violent crime, and this year I think it was an uptick of about 17%, and a lot of that happened in the city of Minneapolis. And the city of Minneapolis, and granted, I think a lot of it is, it's both the community and it's also the police department, and obviously there are things that are not going well there, but you have a thing going on where just police officers are up and quitting because they feel like their community doesn't have their backs, and especially their elected officials, and that's a real problem. And obviously there's repair that needs to happen on both ends of that, but we need to make sure that we support these folks and that the safety of our community is number one, especially for our families.
Thank you. Last question, and we're going to begin with candidate Jiraki on this one. The City of Duluth no longer allocates funding to the Duluth Sister Cities International Program. The mission of the program is, with person-to-person diplomacy and community engagement, Duluth Sister Cities International promotes mutual respect and global understanding through cultural, economic, and educational endeavors. What commitment, if any, do you think the city should make to support the Sister Cities program in the future?
Well, Pat, I absolutely believe in the value of interpersonal diplomacy. We're in a world that needs more peace and understanding, which is why I think the city should continue to be in a sister city program. However, when it comes to costs of that program, when I speak to my constituents, when I knock doors and listen to working families and business owners, I haven't heard sending money to Japan as one of their top priorities. What I hear is a need to invest in our public safety and our police. I hear a need to ensure housing affordability and streamline our business process to build and to grow and expand. I hear a need for affordable childcare and how the city could help there with its federal funds. And I hear the need to be a welcoming place to families and business owners alike. I think that it's a wonderful thing to encourage ties across nations and cultures. But I think we need to make sure we take care of every Duluthian first before we use a dime of taxpayer money to be part of an international program.
Thank you. Same question, candidate Zabraki.
In terms of allotting funding towards sister cities, first of all, one of the big reasons why, one of my big influences for getting involved in politics is I love to travel. I've been to all 50 states, and then in the last few years I've been fortunate to travel internationally to a few places, and it's really one of those things where you get to see how other people live, you get to see how other communities are run, you can kind of borrow ideas, and then one of the things you also notice is that folks who may not look like you or have the same faith beliefs or whatever, that for the most part people are the same. They want the best for their community, they want the best for their kids, and they're just trying to do that. In terms of supporting those things, I think if it was specifically targeted towards kids that are less fortunate, who are less likely to be able to afford that kind of international travel that I can afford and I can afford, for my family and stuff, to be able to get some kids scholarships and stuff, so that they can go and experience another culture and see what that's like and have that kind of an opportunity. I think those are things that we could look at. I don't want Sister Cities International to fund a trip for me to go there when I can afford it on my own, but for a kid that might not ever get a chance to do international travel but for this program, I think that would be wonderful, just a fantastic opportunity for folks to broaden their horizons and think about a global world and a global perspective.
Thank you. Candidate Rankin.
I actually don't think it should be something that should be funded by the taxpayer. I think it should be something done on a charitable thing instead. I do have to say, I haven't heard anybody ever bring it up to me as well. They're more looking at our streets, looking at our safety, looking at our housing, looking at our jobs. And like Andrew had said, I haven't heard one person say anything about funding something to travel somebody overseas. So to me, I think it should never be funded by the city. I think it should just be something that should be a charitable organization instead, or you make a charity donation to it to send somebody overseas. I do agree with having sister cities is great, but I think it could be done without the taxpayer expense. Thank you.
Thank you. And candidate Mayo, same question.
Yeah, so Sister Cities is really, I believe it's important to our city in terms of cultural diversity, historic preservation, and being able to learn from people in other parts of the world, other cultures. We all have different experiences, and some of those are actually shared across cultures. And many of them we can learn from other communities. And as Dave said, there's a lot of ideas out there on things that we can do as a community to really make it better. I am a strong believer in funding and kind of reallocating those funds back to sister cities post-COVID. I know that those were kind of taken out of the budget line item as something that we had to do last year dealing with the pandemic specifically, and I think that we will have the funds this year to reallocate those back. That's been something that we've provided as a city for many years. Was initially an organization that was a part of our city, and over years separated and became its own entity. But the mayor entered into an agreement many years ago to be that partner for sister cities, and I think it's important that we continue to do that moving forward so that we can promote everything they're working on with our sister cities, several of them throughout the world.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And that closes the question portion, and this time I'd like to invite the candidates to give a 2-minute closing statement. We will begin with candidate Zabraki.
Well, just thanks again for having me here. Like I said, the motto of my campaign is "Let's build a better Duluth." If you want to find out more about me and my campaign, you can check out my Facebook page. Otherwise, davez4duluth.org, or you can email me at davez4duluth, FOR, not the number 4, at gmail.com. I just want to thank all the other candidates for being here too. I think getting to know you guys and then some of the other candidates that are running at large. I think we got like a really nice group of folks that care very deeply about our city and have broad perspectives and I'm hopeful. I think we're in good hands. So yeah. Good job, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Candidate Rankin?
I want to say thank you also for the opportunity to hear my opinions and stuff. I know if I offended anybody, I do apologize. Everybody has different views. That's what makes this country great, is different views, different opinions, different insights to things. I think that's what makes the city grow stronger, is by listening to what everybody else says, just not by going by your own decision. If you're going to vote, please vote with your heart, not with your party line. Vote with the heart. Listen to what people have said. Listen to what your neighbors say. Listen to what everybody says. Go with everything. You can reach me. My phone number is 218-409-2545. I do call back. It might take me a day or so, but I will end up calling you back and answering your questions. I give you my email, but everybody thinks it's a joke email, but it is a legit email. It's jokeno101@gmail.com. It's a legit email. I do answer it. And like I said, getting to know these guys, this is kind of new to me. Politics is new. But, I do appreciate the time that you have given me. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Mayo?
So once again, thank you to the league. Thank you to PACT-TV for helping with this today. And thanks to all the candidates for showing up. It was really great to hear everyone's perspectives. I grew up in this community and went to college here and chose to stay here because of my deep love for what Duluth is. I mean, every time you come over that hill, Thompson Hill, and you see the amazing Lake Superior and the St. Louis River watershed, it's just like breathtaking. And it always makes me wonder why I left for a vacation for 2 days or something like that. And I still have stayed in this community. I work at UMD and our public schools as well, and I think it's really important that we have people that are really deeply rooted and connected. I've been knocking on doors for the past couple months here and hearing a lot of concerns from residents about the affordability of Duluth and being able to afford to stay here. The reasons why they chose to move here, if they moved here recently, the path ahead for our city as we move towards kind of a green energy future as well, and some of our streets and infrastructure. Everyone likes to talk about it, but there's a lot going on. We even have projects in the 2nd District, some really critical water projects going on in Hidden Valley that are super important and residents are really excited to hear about. So once again, thank you, and I'm really excited to dig into these issues of affordable housing, protecting our environment for generations to come, continuing to be that responsive person that can represent you as your counselor on the 2nd District. And I look forward to hearing more from you. You can check out our website, mayouduluth.org, and you can visit our Facebook as well. And I'm always open to communication, questions, and more. So feel free to reach out in whatever way is easiest for you, and I look forward to earning your support on August 10th. Thanks.
Thank you. And candidate Jiraki?
Thank you, Pat. To sum up my campaign, I want to be a champion for our community's families, homes, and businesses. For our families, I'm ready to work tirelessly to make sure that our working parents get the help they need to find affordable, trustworthy, and reliable childcare. I'm also ready to personally commit myself to understanding what will produce the maximum public safety for the least taxpayer money in our city to ensure every child can be safe and equally protected in our city. For homes, I'm ready to work tirelessly to make it easier to build, to grow, and to provide housing that is affordable for every kind of family. And I'm ready to continue to work to make sure that every family affected by the pandemic can keep their home through federal, state, and local assistance. And lastly, for businesses, I'm ready to be a champion for our job creators. I will right-size our taxes, and I will be a voice of fiscal prudence and restraint on the council. I will do everything I can to make sure that Duluth is a forward-thinking place, that is a great place to bring good-paying jobs, to make sure businesses can get the help they need to be as energy efficient as possible and as sustainable as possible as well. And I'll make sure to invest in our infrastructure and fill those potholes that both our businesses, visitors, and residents alike depend on. And lastly, as a lifelong Duluthian, I'm ready to work without pay. It's not the salary, it's not the attention. The wage of this position is to represent our community, and the satisfaction I'll receive is listening, because I believe what we need most is a city councilor who will listen. And that's why I believe, of any option, I will be your candidate if you want a city councilor who will listen. Listen to the needs of your family, listen to the needs of your household, listen to the needs of your business. My name's Andrew Chiraki. You can visit my website, andrewforduluth.com. I look forward to hearing from you, and I'm excited to work for you. Vote on August 10th.
Thank you. This concludes the candidate forum for the Duluth City Council Districts 2 and 4. It is our purpose in sponsoring this forum to provide you with an opportunity to hear candidates discuss the issues important to you. There's never enough time to cover all the issues in a limited time setting, so if your questions were not addressed, you should feel free to contact the candidates directly. We hope this has helped you learn more about the candidates and issues so that you can make an informed choices at the polls on Tuesday, August 10th. Thanks to the candidates and PACT-TV for making this event possible. And PACT-TV will broadcast this forum. You can check their website for a schedule of viewing times. Thanks and have a great day.